The coffin was about to close when Serena's voice shattered the silence like a gunshot. "He's not dead." Every head in the funeral hall turned. The priest's hand froze mid-blessing. Mourners gasped. A woman in black clutched her pearls and stumbled backward. The polished mahogany casket gleamed under the chapel's golden lights, surrounded by white roses and candles that flickered as if the room itself had taken a breath. Serena stood at the entrance, soaking wet from the rain, her hair plastered to her face, her coat torn at the sleeves. Mud streaked her cheeks. She looked like a ghost, wild-eyed and trembling. But her voice was steady, loud, and desperate. "He's not dead. Please. You have to listen to me." Two security guards in black suits moved toward her immediately. Don Matteo Moretti, standing tall and stone-faced at the front of the room, raised one hand. The guards stopped. His eyes, cold and sharp as broken glass, locked onto Serena. He didn't recognize her. Why would he? She was nothing now. A homeless woman. A shadow. But 5 years ago, she had been everything to his son. Don Matteo's voice was low, dangerous. "Who let this woman in here?" No one answered. The room was thick with tension. Serena's breath came in short bursts. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She took a step forward, her legs shaking beneath her. "I know how this sounds. I know what I look like. But I'm telling you the truth. Your son is alive. Luca is alive." The name hung in the air like a curse. Luca Moretti. The golden son. The kind one. The one who wasn't supposed to die 5 years ago in a fiery car crash on the Hudson Bridge. The one they were about to bury today in a closed casket. No questions asked, no autopsy, no delays. A woman near the front row, draped in black lace and diamonds, let out a soft sob. Elena Russo, Luca's former fiancée. She dabbed at her eyes with a silk handkerchief, but Serena saw something else flicker across her face. Not grief. Fear. Don Matteo stepped forward, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. His voice was ice. "You're delusional. You're disturbed. And you're disrespecting my family in our moment of grief." Serena's throat tightened, but she forced the words out. "I saw him move. Inside the casket. I saw it." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Nervous, uncomfortable laughter. Someone whispered, "She's lost her mind." Another voice hissed, "Get her out of here." But Serena didn't move. She couldn't. Because at that very moment, she saw it again. A twitch. A slight, almost invisible shift beneath the satin lining of the coffin lid. Her breath caught. She pointed, her hand shaking. Look at the casket. Please." The priest glanced nervously at Don Matteo, unsure what to do. The Don's jaw clenched. He nodded sharply to the guards. "Remove her. Now." The two men grabbed Serena by the arms, but she fought back, twisting and shouting. "You're burying him alive. Don't you understand? He's sedated. He's under drugs. They're going to bury him and no one will ever know." Her voice cracked with desperation. Tears streamed down her face. The guards dragged her backward, her feet scraping against the floor. And then it happened. A sound. Faint. Muffled. But unmistakable. A groan. From inside the casket. The room went deadly silent. Every eye turned toward the coffin. The priest stepped back, his face pale. Don Matteo's expression didn't change, but his fingers curled into fists at his sides. Serena stopped struggling. The guards loosened their grip, staring at the casket in disbelief. Another sound. Louder this time. A scraping noise. Like fingernails against wood. "Oh my God," someone whispered. A woman screamed. The casket lid trembled. Just slightly. But enough. Elena Russo stood frozen, her hand over her mouth, eyes wide with terror. Don Matteo's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Do not open that casket." But it was too late. Because at that very moment, the lid cracked open from the inside. A pale hand slipped through the gap, fingers twitching, reaching toward the light. And the entire room erupted into chaos. If you're already on the edge of your seat, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe to this channel because what happens next will leave you speechless. Trust me, you don't want to miss a single second of this story. Serena's knees buckled. She collapsed to the floor, gasping for air, her vision blurring with tears. The guards released her, too stunned to move. People were shouting now, scrambling toward the exits, others rushing forward to see. The priest backed away, clutching his Bible like a shield. Don Matteo stood perfectly still, his face a mask of fury and something else. Something darker. Guilt. Serena crawled forward on her hands and knees, her voice breaking. Luca. Luca, I'm here. I'm here. The hand from the casket trembled violently, then went limp. Someone yelled, "Call an ambulance." Another voice shouted, "Get a doctor in here now." But Serena couldn't hear any of it. All she could see was that hand. That familiar hand. The same hand that had once held hers under the stars, promising her forever. She reached out, her fingers brushing against his. And for the first time in 5 years, she whispered the words she thought she'd never say again. "I found you." Paramedics swarmed the chapel within minutes, their radios crackling with urgent codes. Serena was shoved aside as they pried the casket lid fully open, revealing the face she had mourned for 5 long years. Luca Moretti. His skin was ghostly pale, his lips tinged blue. An 4-line dangled from his arm, the needle still embedded in his vein. His chest rose and fell in shallow, labored breaths. Alive. Barely. But alive. One of the paramedics pressed 2 fingers against Luca's neck, checking for a pulse. His eyes widened. "We've got a heartbeat. Weak, but it's there. Get the stretcher. Move." Serena's whole body shook. She tried to stand, but her legs gave out. A woman in the crowd reached down to help her, but another hand slapped hers away. It was Elena, her face twisted with rage and something that looked like panic. "Don't touch her," Elena hissed. "She's the reason this is happening." Serena looked up at her, confusion clouding her tear-filled eyes. "What?" Elena didn't answer. She turned sharply and walked toward Don Matteo, whispering something in his ear. The old man's face darkened. He glanced at Serena, then back at the paramedics lifting Luca's limp body onto the stretcher. For a moment, Serena thought she saw something crack in Don Matteo's expression. Regret, maybe. Or fear. But it vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by the cold, unreadable mask he always wore. "Take him to the estate," Don Matteo ordered. "Not the hospital. Our doctors will handle this." One of the paramedics shook his head. "Sir, with all due respect, this man needs immediate medical attention at a facility equipped for." "I said take him to the estate," the Don repeated, his voice like iron. "Do I need to make myself clearer?" The paramedic hesitated, then nodded. They wheeled Luca toward the side exit, his hand slipping off the edge of the stretcher, fingers limp and lifeless. Serena scrambled to her feet, stumbling after them. "Wait. Please. Let me go with him." A guard stepped in front of her, blocking her path. His expression was blank, emotionless. "You're not family." "I'm the only reason he's alive," Serena shot back, her voice stronger now, fueled by desperation and anger. "If I hadn't stopped this funeral, you would have buried him. You know that." The guard didn't budge. Behind her, Don Matteo's voice rang out across the chapel. "Everyone, leave. Now. This service is over." The mourners didn't need to be told twice. They filed out quickly, whispering to each other, phones already in hand. By tomorrow, the whole city would know. The Moretti heir, risen from the dead. Serena stood alone in the empty hall, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The rain outside pounded against the stained glass windows, casting fractured colors across the floor. She looked down at her hands. They were still shaking. She had done it. She had saved him. But why did it feel like she had just walked into a trap? A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "You shouldn't have come here." Serena turned. A young woman stood near the doorway, her face half hidden in shadow. She was dressed simply, a dark coat pulled tight around her shoulders. Her eyes were kind, but filled with fear. "Who are you?" Serena asked. The woman glanced over her shoulder, making sure no one else was listening. "My name is Julia. I work in the Moretti household. As a nurse." Serena's heart skipped. You knew he was alive." Julia nodded slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been taking care of him for the past 3 months. They told me he was brain dead. That keeping him on sedatives was a mercy. But I started to notice things. His fingers would move. His eyes would flutter. I reported it once. They told me to keep my mouth shut." Serena felt a cold wave wash over her. "Who told you that?" Julia hesitated. Then she said the name that made everything click into place. "Elena Russo." Serena's stomach dropped. "Elena." Julia nodded. "She's been involved from the beginning. I don't know all the details, but I've seen her in the medical wing late at night, adjusting his whispering to the doctors. She didn't want him to wake up." "Why?" Serena's voice cracked. "Why would she do that?" Julia stepped closer, her eyes filled with urgency. "Because Luca was going to leave her. Before the accident, he told his father he was done with the family business. Done with the arranged engagement. He said he was in love with someone else." Serena's breath caught in her throat. Julia continued. "The night of the crash, Luca was on his way to meet you. But he never made it. His car went off the bridge, and everyone assumed he died. Except he didn't. Someone pulled him out of the water. Someone kept him alive just long enough to use him." "Use him for what?" Julia shook her head. "I don't know. But I do know this. If you stay here, they'll kill you too." Before Serena could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway. Julia's face went pale. She pressed a small folded piece of paper into Serena's hand. "There's an address on this. If you want the truth, go there tonight. Alone." And then she was gone, disappearing through a side door just as 2 guards entered the chapel. Serena quickly stuffed the paper into her coat pocket. One of the guards pointed toward the exit. "You need to leave. Now." She didn't argue. She walked out into the rain, her mind spinning with questions, her heart pounding with fear and hope and something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. She unfolded the paper under a street lamp, rain soaking through the ink. It was an address on the south side of the city. A warehouse district. And beneath it, scrawled in shaky handwriting, were 3 words. "He remembers you." Serena closed her eyes, clutching the paper to her chest as the rain poured down around her. Luca was alive. And somewhere, buried beneath the drugs and the lies, he still remembered her. But the question that haunted her now, the one that twisted like a knife in her gut, was this. If Luca had been alive all this time, who wanted him dead? And why? Serena had nowhere to go but the streets she knew too well. The rain soaked through her thin coat as she made her way back to the overpass where she'd been sleeping for the past year. It wasn't much. Just a piece of cardboard, a dirty blanket, and the constant roar of traffic overhead. But it was hers. She sat down, her back against the cold concrete wall, and pulled out the crumpled paper again. The ink had smeared, but the address was still legible. She memorized it, then tucked it back into her pocket. "He remembers you." Those 3 words echoed in her mind, louder than the thunder rumbling across the sky. She closed her eyes and let herself remember. 5 years ago, Serena Hale had been somebody. She had an apartment with a view of the river, a closet full of clothes that still had tags on them, and a business she'd built from nothing. Hale Interiors. It wasn't just a job. It was her dream. And then she met Luca Moretti. He walked into her design studio on a Tuesday morning, wearing a charcoal suit and a smile that made her forget her own name. He said his father wanted the penthouse redone. Something modern. Something that didn't scream old money and blood ties. Serena had heard the rumors about the Morettis. Everyone had. They weren't just wealthy. They were powerful in ways that made people whisper and look over their shoulders. But Luca didn't seem like the monster everyone feared. He was gentle, curious. He asked her questions about her work, her inspiration, her life. And he kept coming back. Every morning, he'd show up with 2 cups of coffee. One black, one with cream and sugar, just the way she liked it. He'd sit on the edge of her desk and watch her sketch, asking why she chose certain colors, certain textures. He made her feel seen in a way no one ever had. It didn't take long before the coffee turned into late dinners. The dinners turned into long walks by the water. And the walks turned into stolen kisses in the shadows where no one could see. Serena knew it was dangerous. She knew his family would never accept her. But when Luca looked at her, none of that mattered. One night, under a sky full of stars, he held her face in his hands and said, "I don't care what my father thinks. I don't care about the business or the legacy or any of it. I just want you." She believed him. But love, she learned, was not enough to protect you from people like Don Matteo Moretti. It started small. A client pulled out of a contract. Then another. Her investors suddenly went silent. Her bank accounts were frozen without explanation. She hired a lawyer, but no one wanted to take her case. Not when they heard the name Moretti. Then came the charges. Embezzlement, fraud, tax evasion. All of it fabricated. All of it designed to destroy her. She went to Luca's apartment, desperate, begging for help. But he was gone. His phone was disconnected. His doorman said he hadn't been there in days. And then the news broke. Luca Moretti, beloved son of Don Matteo Moretti, killed in a tragic car accident. His vehicle went off the Hudson Bridge in the middle of the night. They found the wreckage, but the body was too burned to identify. Serena didn't believe it at first. She couldn't. But when she tried to attend the private memorial service, security turned her away at the gate. She stood in the rain, screaming his name, until the police dragged her away. No one cared. No one believed her. And slowly, piece by piece, her life fell apart. Within 6 months, she lost everything. Her business, her apartment, her reputation. She became invisible. Just another face in the crowd. Just another broken soul the city chewed up and spit out. But she never stopped loving him. Every night, she'd look up at the stars and whisper his name, hoping somehow, somewhere, he could hear her. And now, 5 years later, she'd found him. Or maybe he'd found her. Serena opened her eyes, her jaw set with determination. She didn't know what was waiting for her at that warehouse. She didn't know who to trust or what the truth really was. But she knew one thing. She wasn't running anymore. She pulled herself to her feet, her legs aching and cold. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. The city stretched out before her, a maze of lights and shadows. She started walking. It took her 2 hours to reach the address. The warehouse district was dark and abandoned, most of the buildings boarded up or crumbling. Serena's footsteps echoed against the wet pavement. She checked the paper again. This was the place. The building in front of her was 3 stories tall, its windows shattered, its walls covered in graffiti. A rusted chain hung loose across the front door. She hesitated. Every instinct told her to turn back. This was a trap. It had to be. But then she thought of Luca's hand reaching out from that casket. She thought of Julia's words. "He remembers you." Serena pushed the door open. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of mold. Broken glass crunched under her feet. She moved carefully, her eyes adjusting to the darkness. "Hello." Her voice echoed through the empty space. No answer. She took another step forward, and suddenly, a light flickered on above her. A single bulb, swaying gently from a frayed wire. And standing in the center of the room, half hidden in shadow, was a man. Serena's heart stopped. He stepped forward into the light. It wasn't Luca. It was someone else. Someone she recognized from the funeral. One of Don Matteo's guards. The one who had grabbed her arm and tried to throw her out. He smiled. Not a kind smile. A predator's smile. "You actually came," he said, his voice low and amused. "I didn't think you'd be that stupid." Serena backed up, her pulse racing. "Where's Julia?" The man laughed. "There is no Julia." Well, there was. But she's not here anymore. Serena's blood ran cold. He took another step closer. "You really thought you could just walk into the Moretti family and play hero? You really thought they'd let you live after what you did today? I saved his life, Serena said, her voice shaking but defiant. The man tilted his head. Did you? Or did you just ruin a very carefully laid plan? Before she could respond, two more figures stepped out from the shadows behind him. Both armed. Serena's breath came fast and shallow. She glanced toward the door, but it was too far. She'd never make it. The man pulled a gun from his jacket and pointed it at her chest. Nothing personal, he said. But you should have stayed invisible. Serena closed her eyes, her mind racing. This was it. This was how it ended. But then, a voice cut through the silence like a knife. Put the gun down. Everyone froze. Serena's eyes snapped open. Standing in the doorway, backlit by the streetlights outside, was a figure she thought she'd never see again. Tall, lean, dark hair falling across his forehead. Luca Moretti. And he was holding a gun of his own. Luca's voice was hoarse, barely more than a rasp, but it carried the weight of a man who had crawled back from the dead. I said put it down. The guard's face went pale. His hand wavered. Mr. Moretti, you shouldn't be out of bed. You're not. I'm not what? Luca interrupted, stepping fully into the light. His face was gaunt, his eyes sunken and shadowed with exhaustion. He moved slowly, like every step took effort, but his aim never faltered. Dead. That was the plan, wasn't it? The guard swallowed hard. Sir, I don't know what you think you heard, but... I heard everything, Luca said coldly. I've been awake for hours. Listening. Watching. Waiting to see who would show their hand first. He looked past the guard, his eyes locking onto Serena. For a moment, neither of them moved. The world seemed to shrink down to just the two of them, standing across a room full of danger and lies. Serena's voice broke. Luca. His expression softened, just barely. The hardness in his eyes flickered, replaced by something raw and painful. You came for me. I never stopped, she whispered. One of the other guards shifted, reaching for his weapon. Luca's gun swung toward him instantly. Don't. The man froze. Luca's jaw clenched. All of you. Drop your weapons. Now. The first guard hesitated, then slowly lowered his gun to the floor. The others followed. Luca kicked them aside, never taking his eyes off the men. Now get out, he said. And tell my father I'm done playing dead. The guards exchanged uneasy glances. One of them spoke up, his voice shaking. He'll kill us if we go back empty-handed. Then I suggest you run, Luca replied flatly. They didn't need to be told twice. Within seconds, they were gone, their footsteps echoing down the alley outside. The silence that followed was deafening. Serena stood frozen, her heart hammering in her chest. Luca lowered the gun slowly, his hand trembling. He leaned against the wall, breathing hard, his face slick with sweat. She rushed toward him. Luca, you need to sit down. I'm fine, he said, but his voice cracked. He wasn't fine. He looked like he might collapse at any moment. Serena caught him as his knees buckled, guiding him down to the dusty floor. She knelt beside him, her hands on his shoulders, her eyes searching his face. What did they do to you? Luca closed his eyes, his breathing ragged. They kept me sedated. 4 months. Maybe longer. I don't know anymore. Time. It all blurs together. Why? Serena's voice shook. Why would they do this? Luca opened his eyes, and the pain in them nearly broke her. Because I was leaving. I told my father I was done. Done with the family. Done with the business. Done with Elena. He looked at her, and his voice dropped to a whisper. I told him I was going to find you. Serena's throat tightened. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I thought you were dead. I mourned you. I lost everything because of you. I know, Luca said, his own eyes glistening. And I'm sorry. God, Serena, I'm so sorry. She shook her head, choking on a sob. You don't get to apologize. You don't get to just. I didn't leave you, Luca said fiercely, grabbing her hand. I was on my way to you that night. I had a ring in my pocket. I was going to ask you to run away with me, to leave this city and never look back. Serena stared at him, her heart shattering all over again. But I never made it, Luca continued, his voice breaking. My car went off the bridge. I remember the water, the cold. I thought I was going to die. And then, nothing. I woke up in a bed, strapped down, unable to move. They told me it was for my own good, that I'd been in an accident, that I needed time to heal. But it was a lie, Serena said. Luca nodded. They kept me drugged, just enough to keep me compliant, weak. I'd have moments of clarity, but they never lasted. I'd try to speak, to ask for you, but no one would listen. And then one day, I heard my father's voice. He said it was better this way, that I was a liability, that the family would be safer if I just disappeared. Serena's hands trembled. He was going to bury you alive. Luca's expression darkened. He was going to let me die and call it a tragedy. A closed casket. No questions. No evidence. And Elena. Luca's face twisted with anger. She knew. She was part of it. I don't know why yet, but I will. Serena wiped her eyes, her mind racing. We need to get you out of here. Somewhere safe. There's nowhere safe, Luca said bitterly. Not in this city. Not while my father's still breathing. Then we leave, Serena said firmly. Tonight. Right now. Luca looked at her, and for the first time since she'd seen him in that casket, something like hope flickered in his eyes. You'd do that? After everything? Serena cupped his face in her hands, her voice steady despite the tears. I told you 5 years ago. I'm not afraid of your family. I'm not afraid of your father. The only thing I've ever been afraid of is living without you. Luca's breath hitched. He leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers. I don't deserve you. Probably not, Serena said with a shaky laugh. But you're stuck with me anyway. For a moment, they just stayed there, holding each other in the darkness, the weight of 5 years of grief and longing finally breaking. But the moment didn't last. The sound of tires screeching outside shattered the stillness. Car doors slammed. Voices shouted orders. Luca's head snapped up. They're here. Serena's stomach dropped. Who? Everyone, Luca said grimly. He grabbed the gun again, forcing himself to his feet. My father doesn't forgive. And he doesn't forget. Serena stood beside him, her heart pounding. What do we do? Luca looked at her, and despite everything, he smiled. A sad, tired smile. We fight. The warehouse door exploded open. Flashlights swept across the room. A voice boomed through the darkness. Luca Moretti. Step outside. Now. It was Don Matteo. And behind him stood a dozen armed men, their weapons raised, their faces cold and emotionless. Serena's breath caught. They were surrounded. Luca squeezed her hand, his voice low and urgent. No matter what happens, stay behind me. Luca, she whispered. He looked at her one last time, his eyes filled with everything he couldn't say. And then he stepped forward, into the light, facing his father for the first time in 5 years. Don Matteo stood at the entrance, his silhouette framed by headlights. His expression was unreadable. Hello, son, he said quietly. Luca's hand tightened around the gun, and the air between them crackled with the promise of violence. Luca didn't lower the gun. Neither did the men surrounding his father. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. Don Matteo took a slow step forward, his hands clasped behind his back. He looked older than Serena remembered. Tired, but no less dangerous. Put the gun down, Luca, he said calmly. This doesn't have to end badly. Luca let out a bitter laugh. Doesn't have to end badly? You were going to bury me alive. Don Matteo's jaw tightened. I was protecting you. By killing me. By keeping you safe, the Don snapped, his voice rising for the first time. You have no idea what you were walking into. What you were about to throw away. I was walking toward freedom, Luca shot back. I was walking toward her. He gestured toward Serena without taking his eyes off his father. Don Matteo's gaze shifted to her, cold and appraising. She felt like an insect under a microscope. Her, the Don repeated, his voice dripping with disdain. A woman with no family, no name, no future. You were willing to destroy everything we built for her? Serena's fists clenched at her sides. She wanted to scream, to defend herself, but Luca spoke first. Everything you built was a prison, he said quietly. And I'd rather die free than live another day in it. Don Matteo's expression hardened. Then you're a fool. He nodded to one of his men. The guard stepped forward, raising his weapon. Serena's breath caught. Luca's finger hovered over the trigger. But before anyone could fire, another voice cut through the night. Stop. Everyone turned. A black sedan pulled up behind the line of cars, its headlights piercing the darkness. The door opened, and out stepped a woman in a tailored coat, her heels clicking against the wet pavement. Elena Russo. She walked forward with the confidence of someone who knew she held all the cards. Her eyes flicked between Luca and Don Matteo, a small smile playing on her lips. Lower your weapons, she said smoothly. All of you. The guards hesitated, looking to Don Matteo for confirmation. He gave a curt nod. Slowly, the guns lowered. Luca's eyes narrowed. What are you doing here, Elena? She tilted her head, her smile widening. Saving you. Again. Serena's stomach twisted. There was something wrong about the way Elena looked at Luca. Something possessive. Hungry. You don't get to play savior, Luca said coldly. Not after what you did. Elena's smile didn't falter. What I did? Darling, I kept you alive. By drugging me. By keeping me prisoner? By keeping you out of a war you weren't ready for, Elena said sharply. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. Your father's enemies were circling, Luca. They wanted you dead. Really dead. The only way to protect you was to make everyone believe you already were. Luca stared at her, his jaw tight. So the car crash was staged, Elena finished. With your father's blessing. We pulled you out of the water before the explosion. We kept you hidden. Safe. Safe. Luca's voice shook with rage. You kept me sedated. You kept me locked away like some kind of animal. Elena's eyes flashed. We kept you alive. And what was the endgame? Luca demanded. Keep me drugged forever? Bury me when I became too much trouble? Don Matteo stepped forward, his voice grave. The plan was to wait until the threat passed. Until it was safe for you to return. But it's been 5 years, Luca said bitterly. 5 years, and you never told me. You never gave me a choice. Because you would have made the wrong one, the Don said flatly. He gestured toward Serena. You already did once. Serena flinched, but she held her ground. Luca's grip on the gun tightened. You don't get to decide my life for me. Not anymore. Elena sighed, as if dealing with a stubborn child. Luca, listen to me. The people who wanted you dead, they're still out there. If you walk away now, they'll find you. And this time, I won't be able to protect you. Then don't, Luca said simply. Elena's expression faltered for the first time. What? I don't want your protection, Luca said. I don't want anything from you. Or him. He looked at his father. I'm leaving. Tonight. And if you try to stop me, I'll make sure the whole world knows what you did. Don Matteo's face darkened. You'd destroy your own family? You already did that, Luca said quietly. For a long moment, no one moved. The rain had started again, a soft drizzle that misted the air. Then Don Matteo spoke, his voice low and final. If you walk away, you're no longer my son. You're no longer a Moretti. You'll have nothing. No money. No protection. No name. Luca met his father's eyes without flinching. Good. He lowered the gun and turned toward Serena. Let's go. She didn't hesitate. She took his hand, and together they walked toward the edge of the lot, away from the lights and the guns and the family that had tried to bury him. But Elena wasn't done. Luca, wait. He stopped but didn't turn around. Elena's voice trembled, just slightly. You think she loves you? You think she'll stay when she realizes what you've become? Luca glanced back over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. I guess we'll find out. And then he kept walking. Serena's heart pounded as they reached the edge of the lot. She expected gunfire. She expected shouting. She expected Don Matteo to give the order to drag them both back. But nothing came. When they finally reached the street, Luca stumbled. Serena caught him, her arm wrapping around his waist. I've got you, she whispered. He leaned into her, exhausted, broken, but alive. They walked together into the rain, leaving behind the only world Luca had ever known. But as they disappeared into the shadows, Elena stood watching, her fists clenched at her sides. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. It's me, she said quietly. He's gone. A pause. No. I'll handle it. She hung up, her face cold and determined. Because Elena Russo didn't lose. And if Luca thought he could just walk away, he was about to learn a very painful lesson. No one left the Moretti family. Not alive. Serena and Luca walked for hours through the rain-soaked streets. They didn't speak. There was too much to say and no energy left to say it. Luca leaned heavily on her, his breathing labored, his skin clammy and cold. Whatever drugs they'd pumped into him were still working their way out of his system. By the time they reached Serena's shelter under the overpass, dawn was beginning to break. Gray light filtered through the clouds, casting everything in a dull, colorless hue. Luca sank down onto the cardboard, his head falling back against the concrete wall. His eyes closed. Serena knelt beside him, brushing the wet hair from his face. You need a hospital. No hospitals, Luca murmured without opening his eyes. They'll find me. Then what? Serena asked, her voice cracking. You can barely stand. You need help. I just need time, he said quietly. A few hours. Then we'll figure it out. Serena wanted to argue, but she could see the exhaustion etched into every line of his face. She pulled the thin blanket over him, tucking it around his shoulders. Rest, she whispered. I'll keep watch. Luca's hand reached out, finding hers. His grip was weak, but it was there. Don't leave. I'm not going anywhere, Serena promised. His breathing evened out, and within minutes, he was asleep. Serena sat beside him, her back against the wall, her eyes scanning the street. Cars passed overhead. The city woke up around them, indifferent to their pain. She looked down at Luca, and something inside her chest cracked open. This man had given up everything for her. His family, his name, his fortune. And all she had to offer him in return was a piece of cardboard and a dirty blanket. But he'd chosen her anyway. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She wiped them away quickly, refusing to let herself fall apart. Not now. Not when he needed her to be strong. She pulled out the crumpled paper Julia had given her, staring at the smeared address. Who was Julia really? And why had she led Serena into a trap? Unless it hadn't been a trap at all. Maybe Julia had been trying to help. Maybe she'd known Luca would come. Maybe she'd known he was already awake, already listening, already planning his escape. Or maybe Serena was grasping at straws, trying to make sense of a nightmare that refused to end. A sound pulled her from her thoughts. Footsteps. Slow and deliberate. Serena's head snapped up. A figure was walking toward them, silhouetted against the morning light. She tensed, her hand instinctively reaching for the nearest thing she could use as a weapon. A broken piece of metal. Not much, but better than nothing. The figure came closer. And then Serena saw her face. Julia. Serena stood quickly, positioning herself between the nurse and Luca. You led me into a trap. Julia stopped a few feet away, her hands raised in surrender. I didn't have a choice. They were watching me. If I didn't send you there, they would have known I was helping him. Helping him. Serena's voice shook with anger. He almost died because of you. He almost died because of his father. Julia corrected quietly. I did what I could to keep him alive without getting myself killed in the process. Serena didn't lower the metal shard. Why should I believe you? Julia reached into her coat and pulled out a small medical bag. Because I brought insulin, antibiotics, and enough sedative reversal to clear his system in the next 24 hours. She set the bag on the ground and stepped back. I'm not your enemy, Serena. I never was. Serena hesitated, then slowly picked up the bag. Inside were exactly the things Julia had promised. Syringes, vials, bandages. Why are you helping us? Julia's expression softened. Because I have a brother. And if someone had kept him locked in a bed for 5 years, I'd want someone to save him too. Serena studied her face, searching for any sign of deception. But all she saw was exhaustion and fear. What do you want in return? Nothing, Julia said. Just get him out of this city. Because if he stays, they will kill him. And you too. Who's they? Serena demanded. Elena. Don Matteo? Julia shook her head. Bigger than that. There are people who wanted Luca dead 5 years ago, and they still do. His father faked his death to buy time, but it didn't work. The second word gets out that he's alive, those people will come for him. Serena's blood ran cold. What people? Julia glanced over her shoulder nervously. I don't have time to explain. Just trust me. You need to disappear. Today. She turned to leave, then paused. There's a clinic on the south side. Dr. Navarro. Tell him I sent you. He'll help. And then she was gone, disappearing into the morning crowds. Serena stood there for a long moment, clutching the medical bag, her mind racing. Behind her, Luca stirred. His eyes fluttered open. Serena. She turned, kneeling beside him. I'm here. He looked around, disoriented. Where? Safe, Serena said softly. For now. Luca's gaze settled on the medical bag. Where did you get that? A friend, Serena said. Maybe. She pulled out one of the vials and a syringe. This is going to help clear the drugs from your system. It might hurt. Luca managed a weak smile. Can't hurt worse than the last 5 years. Serena's hands shook as she prepared the injection. She'd never done this before, but she'd watched enough people on the streets try to survive. She found a vein in his arm and pushed the needle in. Luca winced but didn't make a sound. When it was done, Serena set the syringe aside and sat back. How do you feel? Like I've been hit by a truck, Luca admitted. But better. Clearer. Good, Serena said. Because we need to move. Soon. Luca reached for her hand, his grip stronger this time. I meant what I said last night. I'm not going back. No matter what. I know, Serena whispered. He looked at her, really looked at her, and his voice dropped. I never stopped thinking about you. Even when I couldn't remember my own name, I remembered yours. Serena's throat tightened. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. We're going to get through this. Together. Luca nodded, his eyes closing. Together. But even as she said the words, Serena couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. Across the city, Elena Russo sat in the back of a limousine, her phone pressed to her ear. He's with her, she said coldly. Under the Jefferson overpass. A pause. Yes, I'm sure. Another pause. No. I want her alive. For now. She hung up and stared out the window, her reflection ghostly in the tinted glass. Luca thought he could just walk away. Thought love was enough to save him. He was wrong. And Elena was going to make sure he learned that lesson. The hard way. Within the hour, 3 black SUVs rolled through the streets, heading toward the overpass. And Serena and Luca had no idea they were coming. Serena heard the engines before she saw the vehicles. A low, menacing rumble that didn't belong in this part of the city at this hour. She looked up sharply, her instincts screaming danger. Luca, she said urgently, shaking his shoulder. We need to go. Now. His eyes snapped open, already alert despite his weakened state. What is it? Company. 3 black SUVs turned onto the street below the overpass, moving slowly, deliberately. Hunting. Luca pushed himself up, swaying slightly. Serena grabbed the medical bag and slung it over her shoulder, then pulled him to his feet. "Can you run?" she asked. "I'll have to," he said grimly. They scrambled up the embankment, away from the overpass. Serena knew these streets like the back of her hand. 5 years of surviving on them had taught her every alley, every shortcut, every place to hide. The SUVs stopped. Doors opened. Men in dark suits stepped out, scanning the area with practiced efficiency. There, one of them shouted, pointing toward the overpass. Serena pulled Luca into a narrow alley between 2 abandoned buildings. They ran, their footsteps echoing off the brick walls. Behind them, she could hear shouting, the sound of boots hitting pavement. Her lungs burned. Luca stumbled, catching himself against the wall. She grabbed his arm, steadying him. "Keep moving," she urged. They burst out of the alley into a wider street. Morning traffic was starting to pick up. Serena flagged down a passing taxi, practically throwing herself in front of it. The driver slammed on the brakes, swearing in Spanish. She yanked open the back door and shoved Luca inside, diving in after him. "Drive," she gasped. "Please. Just drive." The driver turned around, taking in their disheveled appearance, the desperation in Serena's eyes. "Lady, I don't want trouble." Serena pulled out a crumpled $20 bill from her pocket. It was all the money she had in the world. "Please." The driver hesitated, then snatched the bill. "Where to?" "South Side. Dr. Navarro's clinic." The taxi lurched forward just as the men in suits rounded the corner. One of them raised his hand, shouting for them to stop, but the driver was already accelerating. Serena looked back through the rear window. The men were climbing back into their SUVs. "They're following us," she said. The driver's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. "Who are you people?" "No one," Luca said quietly. "We're no one." The driver didn't look convinced, but he pressed harder on the gas. They wove through traffic, the SUVs keeping pace behind them. Serena's heart hammered against her ribs. Beside her, Luca was pale, his breathing shallow. "Hold on," she whispered, gripping his hand. The taxi made a sharp turn, tires squealing. They flew down a side street, then another. The driver knew the city too. He was trying to lose them, but the SUVs were relentless. One of them pulled up alongside the taxi. The window rolled down. A man leaned out, gun in hand. "Get down," Serena screamed. She threw herself over Luca just as the first shot shattered the rear window. Glass exploded over them. The driver swore again, swerving wildly. "You getting me killed," he shouted. The SUV rammed into the side of the taxi. Metal crunched. The car spun, slamming into a parked truck. Everything went silent for a moment. Then Serena's ears started ringing. She tasted blood in her mouth. "Luca," she gasped. "Luca, are you okay?" He groaned beneath her. "I'm alive." The driver was slumped over the steering wheel, unconscious but breathing. Serena forced the door open. It was jammed, bent from the impact, but she kicked it hard and it gave way. She pulled Luca out onto the street. The SUVs were already stopping. Doors opening. Men advancing. "Run," Luca said, pushing her away. "Not without you. Serena. Run." She ignored him, dragging him toward the nearest building. It was an old apartment complex, half the windows boarded up. She kicked open the front door and they stumbled inside. The stairwell was dark and smelled like mold and urine. They climbed, Luca leaning heavily on the railing. Serena could hear footsteps behind them, echoing up from below. Second floor. Third. Fourth. They burst through a door onto the roof. The morning sun was fully up now, casting long shadows across the gravel and tar. Serena looked around desperately. There was nowhere to go. No fire escape. No way down. They were trapped. Luca leaned against the roof's edge, chest heaving. His face was gray. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry I brought this on you." "Don't," Serena said fiercely. "Don't you dare apologize." The door behind them crashed open. 4 men stepped onto the roof, guns drawn. Serena positioned herself in front of Luca, her arms spread wide. "You want him, you go through me." One of the men stepped forward. He was older than the others, his face weathered and scarred. "Ma'am, step aside. This doesn't concern you." "Like hell it doesn't," the man sighed. "We don't want to hurt you, but we will if we have to." "Then you'll have to," Serena said. The man raised his gun, aiming at her chest. Luca tried to push past her, but she held firm. And then, from behind the men, a voice rang out. "Lower your weapons." Everyone turned. Standing in the doorway was a woman in her 60s, silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, wearing a crisp pantsuit. She carried no weapon, but she radiated authority. The men hesitated. "I said lower them," the woman repeated, her voice like steel. Slowly, the guns lowered. The woman walked forward, her heels clicking against the gravel. She looked at Serena and Luca, her expression unreadable. "My name is Victoria Castellano," she said. "And you two have caused quite a bit of trouble." Serena's mind raced. The name meant nothing to her. But Luca's reaction was immediate. His face went white. "Aunt Victoria?" The woman smiled faintly. "Hello, Luca. It's been a long time." Serena looked between them, confused. "You know her?" "She's my father's sister," Luca said quietly. "And the only person in the family he's ever been afraid of." Victoria's smile widened slightly. "Flattery won't save you this time, nephew." She turned to the men. "Leave us." They didn't argue. Within seconds, the roof was empty except for the three of them. Victoria walked to the edge of the roof, looking out over the city. "Your father is a fool," she said. "Always has been. But even fools occasionally stumble onto useful ideas." She turned back to them. "Faking your death was smart. Keeping you sedated for 5 years? That was cowardice. What do you want?" Luca asked warily. Victoria tilted her head. "The same thing I've always wanted. To clean up the mess your father keeps making." She looked at Serena. "And you? The woman who stopped the funeral. The woman who saved my nephew's life." Serena lifted her chin. "What about me?" Victoria studied her for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled. "You have more spine than anyone in that entire family," she said. "Which is why I'm going to help you." Serena blinked. "What?" Victoria pulled a card from her pocket and handed it to Luca. "There's a safe house. 2 hours north of the city. Go there. Stay hidden. And in 3 days, I'll contact you with new identities and enough money to start over somewhere far from here." Luca stared at the card. "Why would you help us?" "Because unlike your father," Victoria said coldly, "I actually care whether you live or die." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and one more thing. Elena Russo is not your enemy." Luca's jaw tightened. "She kept me prisoner. She kept you alive," Victoria corrected. "But she's also in love with you, which makes her dangerous in a different way." She met Luca's eyes. "Be careful, nephew. Love can save you, but it can also destroy you." And with that, she was gone. Serena and Luca stood alone on the roof, the city sprawling beneath them. "Do we trust her?" Serena asked. Luca looked down at the card in his hand. "I don't know. But right now, she's the only chance we've got." They took a bus north. It was slow, crowded, and smelled like diesel and cheap cologne, but it was anonymous. No one looked twice at the exhausted couple huddled in the back row. Luca slept most of the way, his head resting against the window. Serena stayed awake, watching the city fade into suburbs, then farmland, then thick forest. Every time the bus stopped, her heart jumped. Every time someone walked down the aisle, her hand moved closer to the medical bag. But no one came for them. 2 hours later, they stepped off at a small town she'd never heard of. The safe house was a cabin at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by trees. It was small, plain, but clean. And most importantly, it was empty. Serena unlocked the door with the key Victoria had left in the card. Inside, the cabin was furnished simply. A couch, a bed, a kitchenette stocked with canned goods and bottled water. Luca collapsed onto the couch the moment they got inside. His skin was still too pale, his breathing labored. Serena knelt beside him, checking his pulse. It was steadier than before, but he was running on fumes. "You need rest," she said. "Real rest." "So do you," Luca murmured, his eyes already closing. Serena watched him for a moment, then pulled a blanket over him. She sat on the floor beside the couch, her back against the wall, the medical bag in her lap. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to breathe. They'd made it. They were alive. They were together. But she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the eye of the storm. Serena woke to the sound of Luca screaming. She bolted upright, her heart pounding. He was thrashing on the couch, his face twisted in agony, his body drenched in sweat. "Luca," she shouted, grabbing his shoulders. "Luca, wake up." His eyes flew open, wild and unseeing. He swung at her, his fist connecting with her shoulder. She stumbled back, gasping. "It's me," she said desperately. "It's Serena. You're safe." Luca blinked, his breathing ragged. Slowly, recognition dawned in his eyes. He looked at her, then down at his hands, horrified. "Did I hurt you?" "I'm fine," Serena lied, rubbing her shoulder. Luca sat up, burying his face in his hands. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I keep seeing it. The water. The drugs. The coffin." His voice broke. "I keep waking up and thinking I'm still there." Serena sat beside him, wrapping her arms around him. "You're not. You're here. With me." Luca leaned into her, his whole body shaking. "What if I never stop seeing it? What if I can't?" "You will," Serena said firmly. "It's going to take time. But you will." He pulled back, looking at her with red-rimmed eyes. "How are you so strong?" Serena let out a hollow laugh. "I'm not. I've spent the last 5 years sleeping in alleys and digging through trash. I've cried myself to sleep more nights than I can count. I'm not strong, Luca. I'm just still here." Luca reached up, cupping her face in his hands. "You're the strongest person I've ever met." Serena's throat tightened. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his. "We're going to get through this. Together." "Together," Luca repeated softly. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet darkness. The next morning, Serena found a laptop in one of the cabin's drawers. It was old, but it worked. She hesitated, then opened a browser and typed in Luca Moretti. The results flooded the screen. Moretti heir alive after 5 years. Funeral interrupted by homeless woman. Don Matteo Moretti refuses comment. Her stomach twisted as she scrolled through the headlines. Photos of the funeral. Blurry images of her shouting in the chapel. Speculation about conspiracies, family feuds, criminal cover-ups. And then she saw a video. It was from someone's phone, shaky and poorly lit. But it clearly showed the moment Luca's hand pushed through the casket lid. The gasps. The chaos. The video had 12 million views. Serena closed the laptop, her hands shaking. They weren't just running from the Moretti family anymore. They were running from the entire world. "What's wrong?" Luca's voice came from behind her. She turned. He was standing in the doorway, looking better than he had yesterday. The color was starting to return to his face. "We're famous," Serena said bitterly. "Everyone knows you're alive. Everyone's looking for us." Luca walked over and looked at the laptop. His expression darkened. "Of course they are." He sat down beside her. "This changes things." "How?" "It means we can't just disappear," Luca said. "Not anymore. Too many people are watching. If we try to run, someone will recognize us. Someone will talk. So what do we do?" Luca was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "We fight back." Serena looked at him. "Fight back how?" "By telling the truth," Luca said. "All of it. What my father did. What Elena did. Everything." Serena shook her head. "That's suicide. Your father will kill you." "He's going to try either way," Luca said. "At least this way we control the narrative." He reached for the laptop, opening a new browser window. I still have contacts. People who owe me favors. Journalists who've been trying to bring my father down for years. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. If we give them the story, it'll be too big to bury. My father won't be able to touch us without exposing himself. Serena's mind raced. It was risky. Insane, even. But it might be their only shot. Okay, she said. Let's do it. Luca nodded. He started typing. But before he could finish, Serena's phone buzzed. She pulled it out, frowning. It was a blocked number. She almost didn't answer. Then she did. Hello. The voice on the other end was smooth, familiar, and utterly chilling. Hello. Serena. Her blood turned to ice. Elena. Luca's head snapped up. He mouthed, hang up. But Serena couldn't move. You've been very busy, Elena continued. Running around the city. Causing scenes. It's all very dramatic. What do you want? Serena managed. Elena laughed softly. I want you to stop making this harder than it needs to be. Luca belongs with his family. Not with you. He's not yours, Serena said through gritted teeth. Oh, darling, Elena said sweetly. He's always been mine. You were just a distraction. Serena's grip tightened on the phone. If you come near him again, You'll what? Elena interrupted. You have no money, no power, no allies. You're nothing. Her voice turned cold. But I'll make you a deal. Walk away. Leave the city. Leave Luca. And I'll make sure you're taken care of. A new life. A new name. Enough money to start over. Serena's heart pounded. And if I say no, then I'll make sure you don't live long enough to regret it, Elena said simply. The line went dead. Serena lowered the phone, her hand trembling. Luca was on his feet, his face pale. What did she say? She wants me to leave you, Serena said quietly. Luca's jaw clenched. Over my dead body. Serena looked at him, and despite everything, she smiled. That's what I told her. Luca pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. We're not backing down. No, Serena agreed. We're not. But even as she said it, she couldn't shake the fear coiling in her chest. Because Elena Russo didn't make empty threats. And somewhere in the city, Elena sat in her penthouse, staring out at the skyline. She set her phone down and picked up a glass of wine. Click the image showing on your screen right now to watch part 2. More betrayals, more truth, more secrets are yet to be uncovered.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.